A couple of things that at least come to mind from my side. Obviously, we've all been trying to figure out what is that next kind of evolution. How do we get from kind of point A to point B? And one of the things that has certainly been instrumental in kind of coming out of the pandemic is the vaccine supply chain. Both of you have been highly involved in your respective roles. And so what I wanted to do was maybe take a moment and allow you guys to introduce yourselves to start. And as we kind of talk through a little bit of what's the exciting projects on your plate and what's kind of happened over the course of the past 18 months, maybe just give us kind of what's that major thing that you've been working on that is top of mind. And Steve, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Well, thanks, Anthony. Good morning, everybody. Just like to send greetings from New York. Hey, Anthony, you had a great question. When you look at what's on top of mind for the last couple of years, it is the pandemic. But overall, it's still, the business of J&J, and I think everybody knows we have three distinct sectors. We got pharmaceutical, we got medical devices, and consumer. And I think what I, look at over the years, what really learned is how much we relied on face-to-face and sitting in meetings and sitting rooms and getting things done, and how unconnected on a global basis maybe a lot of our things weren't that we thought they were, kind of thing. So you learn something, like I said, you take a crisis and you learn something. What we really learned was not just the importance of data, we knew how important data was, but importance of the connectivity of it. And, every time an Excel spreadsheet or something worked its way in there, we realized that wasn't connected. So that was probably our biggest learning, and one of the things we're really focusing on now in the next couple of years.
Fair enough. Ken?
Well, hello, Anthony. And, I wished we were in New York and in person. As you say, we must adapt and, move on. First of all, you said introduction. Ken Spangler, Executive Vice President of the Global Operating Company Technology. So if you think of it, FedEx, think of FedEx Express, FedEx Ground, FedEx Freight, and FedEx Logistics as the kind of the big transportation and logistics operating companies. There's the thing I'm, probably we've been working on and most proud of is we've been, driving towards, and we're one of the great physical networks in the world, connected by one of the great digital networks in the world. And we've been driving towards, more automation, more scale. And one of our strategic operating principles that we have three strategic operating principles of compete collectively, operate collaboratively, and innovate digitally. But the innovate digitally, and the operating collaboratively, to tell you the truth, came to us at the right time, and I'll give credit where credit's due, our chairman, Fred Smith, but, we were driving hard towards that, and, nobody could have foreseen a pandemic, but the scale that was necessary, the data capabilities that were necessary, and clearly that all showed up together, and the thing we're most proud of is delivering vaccines. We started the first vaccine distribution. We delivered the first U.S. vaccine on December 14th at actually 5 in the morning, not even 8 or 9, 5 in the morning to Boston Medical Center in Boston, Massachusetts, obviously. And really the technology, a lot of the IoT, what we call FedEx SenseAware, and the things we had been working on became much more valuable in the snap of a finger. Yeah. And so I would say, that is the things we've been focused on, but clearly also the things that we're most proud of. And then it's been about, scale and managing through this time.
Yeah, I can imagine. I feel like there's an old saying that I'd rather be lucky than smart, right? And so I think a lot of the things that both of you have done to really kind of prepare the workforce, prepare the organization, and I think even in all cases, everyone's kind of been banging the gavel saying, hey, we need to go to the cloud, and then all of a sudden there was a moment, it's like, well, we now really are needing to go to the cloud because we have no other choice. And luckily, I think organizations like yours both had kind of a leg up so that all the rest of us can get the benefit from a vaccine perspective, for sure. I think, we're kind of, I'll call it 3 days over the anniversary of 9/11. And being in New York, there's always that moment. And sorry, Ken, you couldn't be here in person, but I think one of those things that you kind of always think about, at least for me personally, and we were exchanging stories recently about, where were you, when that happened, right? And I think we all kind of remember that very vivid moment of where we were. I think in the context of maybe kind of, COVID and thinking back, and I'll just rewind us for a moment back to March of 2020, there's also that moment that you're like, okay, this is happening, right? So I'd love to understand from both of you, what was that initial response? There's a moment, and whether it was immediate or it was like maybe a week into it or 2 weeks, or maybe it was the announcement that happened, there was a moment that I'm sure both of you had, which is like, okay, we got to have a playbook. What was that playbook? What'd you do? What was that moment? And what was really your response? Steve, we'll start with you.
Sure, Anthony. It's interesting. You really think of the moment. The big change for this one was, we've had a lot of things where we've had institute our business continuity plans, our disaster recovery plan. We've had those kind of things before. Like a 9/11, it was an instantaneous event, but it was something that happened and then it took years to recover and stuff, but we knew where the path was going to go. The biggest I found with COVID was the changing everything all the time. So, changing when we're going to come back to work, changing when we went out, how governments came in with rules and regulations that, as you know, are still in today's environment are changing, and we operate, look at J&J, we operate in a very regulatory environment. So the government's trying to figure this out as they go and as they put things in place and we have to implement in place. I think the aha moment came for us sometimes around May. As an anecdotal thing, I was scheduled to go in May over to Tel Aviv to look at some new technology. And once a year, we'd go over there and look at a bunch of startup companies, see which technology we can apply. So I moved the planes or the meetings from May to June, June to July. By the time it hit July, we're like, okay, this is going to next year type of thing, right? Now, that's never happened before. So we really had to look at that and said, okay, we have people working at home, and short-term solutions was you've got notebooks, you get, Palm device, you got all kinds of devices, iPads and stuff. But now we realize that this is going to be longer term. So now we've got to do a whole new real focus, and it's really equip a home office and really equip the capability to collaborate. It wasn't just about having video, it's the ability to collaborate. Sure. And then it became not just inside our company, it became collaborating with our logistics vendors, the FedExes, Ken and the team, right? The different 3PLs around the world are different partners that maybe before we pick up the phone or we do a quick field, now we'd say, how do we get them into the collaboration? Or how do we get into theirs? A lot of times we found a lot of our partners were more advanced than us. So how do we work together? And you had to move quickly. And now I think we're reaping the benefits, and I think that's where you're seeing the opposite now, when people are like about going back, and they're like, well, we're getting really good at this, and now when I go back, I have to change and go back to something that wasn't, and so I kind of like this world. So that was our biggest aha moment again was, 3-4 months down the road, said this is not going to be short term. And I think the other thing I like to add is, we talked about agile, we talk about being flexible, but because the rules of this game keep changing, it truly is, trying on our employees, because the thing that we've all told them, that change is constant, and that's what's going on right now. Change is constant kind of thing. So very different than before.
Ken?
Well, Anthony, it's a great question. And it's I'll answer it in a couple ways. I would say we had a little bit of early insight, in January. I mean, obviously we're so global, and even, my IT team obviously is everywhere in the world. And our team in Asia really started to have to act very differently. First of all, physically, our network moving PPE equipment to us really picked up really early. In January, we were flying a lot of full planes. And that demand was significant. But also even the IT team, getting people enabled to remote work started actually in January for us in Asia. But then all of a sudden, I think the second tier to your question is, by March, our eyes got large and we realized this is worldwide. This is significant. And I think Steve's point is right on. You go through from March, you figure out, well, this is significant. And it's that next 30 to 60 days, you said, is not just significant, it's long term. And I would say to us, it came down to really three big things. Probably first is scale, both physically and digitally. We were on a call at 7 a.m. every single morning, 7 days a week to start it. And it wasn't just technology. It was our operating companies in technology enabling scale. The demand on our aircraft, or where our pilots had to be, all of, the team members, how we were keeping them safe. That was always the first topic every single day. So, 7 a.m. every day it started. So that's when this is significant, when you're doing that 7 days a week. And then second was remote. We have a lot of frontline members that have to be out delivering, and how do we keep them safe? And then we had to take, a big percentage, and had to be remote work, and we had to enable that and scale that. So scale and remote were the first two. And then the third thing to us is, we've always been a company that the data matters. All of a sudden, the data became much more important. And I think maybe one of my great lessons learned out of the pandemic is, when the trends change rapidly, you still need to believe the data. The data tells the truth. And so, that was the second thing. So to us, I think it was about scale. It was about how do you, then make a remote workforce. And in fact, I had a team today together, and I said, one of the things we've learned is what we work on and how we do it is more important than where we do it. And that's the lesson for us. And so those three things, I think, were really that they came in a little bit of phases, but that was the aha moment for us.
Yeah, and I feel like we're all kind of in this world where now, obviously, this hybrid work strategy, this kind of being able to work from anywhere. These are all arrows in our quiver, tools kind of in the toolbox. I think also, and thank you both for sharing kind of that aha moment. I'll ask a different question that may be kind of related, but I'll call it, what was that oh crud moment? Like, there's got to be a lot on both of your shoulders. Vaccine distribution, from a supply chain perspective, literally just the challenges. I mean, there was a moment in time where all of a sudden, the entire, Panama Canal or Suez Canal was kind of blocked off, right? So, like, there are times and places where I think just getting something from point A to point B is really, really difficult. So I'd have to ask, during the past, kind of pandemic, especially in the context of vaccine supply chain, but maybe just kind of more generally, did you have like an oh crap moment? Was there like a moment you were like, uh-oh, everything's going to hit the fan, and try to figure out what you had to do? And maybe Ken, will start with you.
I don't know that there was a single moment, Anthony, but
there were just a lot of them. Is that
again? I guess just the nature of being around FedEx a long time, I'll always think in physical and digital. There was definitely many aha moments that the way we run a global network, in both the demand on the network and how to absolutely positively keep our people safe, that was literally a daily aha. And then the regulatory differences around the world. Every single morning at 7 o'clock was like, wow, we didn't even know this yesterday, and today's a different day. So that was just a constant flow.
Talk about adaptation, man. That on an ongoing basis has to just like kind of make your hair gray and give you just a moment to pause every morning, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I would say, and two sides of that, our FedEx Express company, the global, overnight in the massive scale of the airline, that was unique because of its global nature. But even in the U.S., our FedEx Ground company, the scale of e-commerce, when suddenly, it wasn't just the urgent and the, PPE equipment and all the medical supplies that in FedEx Express became important, but even in FedEx Ground, people's just daily well-being was getting it. Now the e-commerce exploded. And here's probably the answer to your, the best answer to your question is, we had a strategy, and we are, relentless, especially because of our chairman being, so forward-looking and just a brilliant guy. We're always driving ahead to our strategy. But our 5-year strategy came to fruition in like 60 days. And we call it slingshot. We slingshot 5 years ahead all of a sudden. And managing that scale and the challenges of that scale was the aha moment. And I will tell you, it's one of those things that we're managing to this day. The slingshot effect, and then what it did to supply chains. Those were truly the aha moment. And from IT, it's about scaling and keeping it reliable and protecting it. And so that has been something that was aha, but it's gone for 18 months now.
Well, when you think about like change management as a concept, right? We all very much embed like almost an 18-month like steering berth to make sure that you actually have the adaptation, the time for adjustment, the time for scale, and all those things. And like a 5-year plan condensed into 60 days, all of a sudden. Oh man! So Steve, what was your oh crud moment?
Ken says a good thing. Like every morning we've been having a meeting. Same thing, Ken. 7 a.m. So you can get Singapore, you can get Europe, you can get everybody together, right? Our biggest thing was speed. So scale was one thing. We had to scale our cold chain, right? That was probably the biggest one, right? Because we had plenty of partners but it was getting the cold chain that was the most important thing, right? And we didn't have some of the challenges some of our other vaccine suppliers had, because we didn't have to go, but still we rely on, Ken and the FedEx out there in the world saying, okay, we hand it off to them. Now, what are you going to do with it? Kind of thing. But I tell you, the other end of it was, when you operate in a regulatory environment, you're used to not making quick decisions. You're kind of like, okay, we just got this data today. We'll get everybody together. We'll have a meeting. We'll discuss it, and then we'll go. And now it was like, oh no, today at 7 a.m. We have to have a decision by the end of today. And the thing we learned is we started to say, look, we're not in the best position being in headquarters or being the executives make these decisions. So we started to rely on our teams out in the field to say, look, you have to tell us, make these decisions. Don't wait for us and come to us and talk to us. Make the best decision you can and go with it. And like Ken said, the trick became the data. We would say, go with the data you have. And then the answer was, but we don't have the data. And then I was like, okay, now we got a different problem. Okay. But it really became that. And I'll tell you one more thing was the vaccine was key. But that two things that we couldn't keep in were Tylenol and Listerine. Yeah, because Tylenol, because of its,
I get it.
So people stocked up. It was kind of like we had toilet paper, paper towels, and Tylenol, okay, right? And Listerine because of people with antiseptic qualities, which is a great product. But what became more problem in the supply chain was the alcohol that you needed for purification and all those things. So who ever thought we'd run out of alcohol? Kind of thing.
It's incredible when you think about it, right? There are all these kind of like random downstream effects. We're still even seeing it now from a supply chain perspective, looking at like silicon and chips and like chip manufacturing, and it has this downstream effect where everything now has kind of, spent a great deal of time being so integrated, right? I guess, one kind of question I had, right? When you look at kind of the integration of everything, it'd be interesting to understand, and maybe this is kind of a more philosophical question, but when you look at this pandemic, there's a lot of lessons learned, right? I think, you've kind of hit on a few of them, right? How do you build for scale? How do you actually, and by the way, decision-making, Steve, I think that's an interesting point that we didn't really even talk about or think about, right? When you look at, being able to bring everyone together and just say, like, we got to make an actual decision right now versus like, okay, we got a meeting to talk about the committee that's going to make a decision on something later. It just kind of shortens the scale. So the scale, the actual speed to decision, the overall kind of connectedness, all of these pieces, right? A lot of lessons learned over the course of the past 18 months. I would ask, if you were to give a lesson to your successor, somebody who were to take over in the next pandemic, God forbid, but it's eventually going to happen, or somebody in the next crisis, the next major thing that's going to happen, what would be that major lesson you would give to someone else that you would say, listen, the one thing you got to do is this? And it could be as simple as, look, stay calm, remember kind of your basics, or it could be as advanced as like think outside of the box, whatever those kind of in-betweens are. But what is that kind of lesson learned? And Ken, we'll start with you.
Well, Anthony, I will always say, and I'm sorry, I'm going to give you asked for one thing, I'm going to give it as kind of a two-part, the people, you got to keep the people first, and anything that happens, people have to adapt. And so, I think that was one of the things that helped us. It was always about the people first, the team members, and then our customers and recipients that we serve around the world. But then the answer to your question is, and this isn't going to sound, revolutionary, but, we had unbelievable technology, these little low energy, Bluetooth low energy tags that made the vaccine visibility incredible, was powerful. But here's the answer to your question. It all came down to us every day: security, keeping everything secure, reliability, and scalability. So if I were giving one advice is, just because things skyrocketed and we leaped ahead, the same principles of day-to-day excellence of any corporation mattered, but they mattered exponentially. So the security, reliability, and scalability would be that's every day, all the time. And if you're not ready for the nimbleness in that, then the rest doesn't matter.
That makes sense. Steve?
I got to reinforce what Ken said on that. It's the people. I have an old saying that luck is when preparation meets reality, right, or opportunity. Yeah. And if you don't train, I spent another life way before I was in the Marines, and the military prepares and trains and trains and trains so that when something happens, it becomes second nature, right? When you have a critical event like this, is not the time to be thinking about data security, right? It's got to be all that preparation you did ahead of time. If you've prepared ahead of time and done all your things and prepared your people and have the right people, then you get something like this and it really comes across. Your people shine and your systems shine and your processes shine. But if you didn't do that, and if you've been band-aiding things as you go along, and if you've got 30-year-old technology because you've just been then you get something like this and you're like, oh my God, all of a sudden it's hit kind of thing, right? So I think the biggest thing is we had our people, they trained up, they shone through with the vaccine for us, and that's all we could ask. And now going forward, we got to figure out how to keep that momentum going. I don't want to bog them down in meetings, right? It's kind of like, no, keep that speed. But I'm already seeing some more and more meetings.
But that's the challenge, right? I mean, honestly, if you think about it, right, and that's my big concern. I think there was all this jammed transformation, and I feel like, and you know, I yearn for the day that this is all a past distant memory, right? But you know, if you look a year down the line, 2 years down the line, are we going to continue to have that level of kind of muscle memory building that says, look, we got to be ready for the next time. We got to be ready for whatever that scale is that's going to happen overnight like that, right? And I worry that, you know, as organizations, we just have a short kind of memory on some of this stuff, right? So I guess maybe to kind of shift the question, what are you doing, and what is also your kind of ecosystem that you're developing around it, whether that's at a government level, whether that's, and obviously, Steve, you mentioned the regulation aspect, right? I have to imagine to a certain extent, innovation becomes really, really tough when kind of government, you know, hovers over, right? So what are the steps that you're taking to ensure that next generation, the after pandemic, how will you actually, you know, stagger and bring in innovation and make sure that you build and continue to build that muscle memory for the organization?
Is that to me or Ken?
To you, Steve. Why don't you?
Sure. You know, quick answer to that is that we for years you've heard about Agile and Scrum and all these techniques to develop software, right? And we've talked about those things, but we really haven't instituted them into the way we run companies. You know, we don't say in the morning, hey, look, we're getting together, we're going to issue by the end of the day, we're going to have a decision, right? What we're doing is we're keeping that mindset. Anybody who leaves the meeting who says that the outcome in this meeting is to have another meeting, not acceptable anymore, right?
Done.
Yeah, because you know that's like what? Oh, we schedule 1 hour meeting for the next, you know, for the whole year. I'm like, okay, wait a minute. If we have 40 hours of work, we can do that 40 hours of work in 1 week, or we can do in 40 weeks with 1 hour a week worth of work, right? And so we've really put some new rules out there, but we've asked our frontline employees to hold us accountable and responsible for that. Because as executives, we will fall right back into our old habits of let's have more meetings, and the new people don't want meetings. They can talk to each other with texts and stuff like that and solve a problem quicker than we can. So that's what we're trying to do.
I like it. Ken?
Yeah, Anthony, you know, we've been driving a business agility program for multiple years, and you know, in that I feel, you know, eliminating waste and reducing context switching has been powerful. But really, it's separating the urgent from the important, and you know, and driving things that we've had. There's urgency, you know, more automation, more scale of the digital data capabilities. You know, that truly, you know, we've all been talking about AI and machine learning, and you know, all the kind of advanced analytics capabilities coming to us. The acceleration of that, and the really, you know, I want to say doubling down, but it's tripling down and more of accelerating that is really critically important. Because when the world changes, again, I mentioned this earlier, but all those trends and all the things that we all think we know, they change. And the visibility and listening, you know, to the data is an important part of whether it's regulatory, whether it's scale, whatever it is. So for us, it's really the urgency around some of the things they are important. They're still important, but there's certain things that are more urgent now than we even thought they were. And that's where we're really going hard at it.
And I like how that dovetails also what you're doing, Steve, right? I think at the end of the day, if you think about kind of that agility, right, it's about everybody get together, let's get action items, let's make decisions, let's make things happen now because we have to. And I think also on top of that, when you look at, you know, kind of the process of actually trusting the data and building that into kind of your separate the urgent from the important, I think that's a good exercise that we all have to go through. And some of that agility actually, you know, makes that easier, right? When you get everybody together, be like, okay, not urgent, not urgent, not urgent. Great, urgent. Focus on this thing, right? So I think those are both wonderful lessons. Well, thank you very much, Ken and Steve. You guys certainly have a yeoman's task upon your shoulders as you kind of continue to help with both the supply chain and the rollout of vaccine, and making sure that we actually can do this in person maybe next year. That'd be nice. So thank you very much for joining. Really appreciate your wisdom and sharing with the crowd, and I look forward to hopefully doing this actually in person at some point.